Hello everyone and welcome to episode number 149 of the Board Game Barrage podcast. I am your host, Neelan, and with me as always for this very almost special episode, in some ways like what comes before the best episode at number 149 can some ways be better than the real thing.
Sometimes the ending lets you down.
That's exactly it. Oftentimes the penultimate episode is the best one, and to be clear, 150 is the final episode. So
yeah.
I heard you say, "Hi, I'm Neelan. I'm almost special," and we'll just end it there.
I definitely did not say that, but this is a almost
I can make
special.
it true in editing.
Oh God, thank you, Mark. You're meant to be on my side.
That's true.
This is an almost special episode of the show. It is episode 149, and this week we're going to be revisiting our shelves of shame. For those who don't know, have not heard us throw this term around, these are the board games that are sitting on our shelves that we haven't played. We look at them longingly and wonder when the time will come to play them. We're going to be talking about the reasons we haven't played them in a year. That seems especially poignant because, I don't know if with the rest of you, but I feel like I've just been receiving as many games this year, but not playing as many games, so I feel like that shelf is growing. So join us later in the episode when we talk about that. But before we get there, we're going to be covering the board games that we've been playing. This week, we're going to have a bunch of quick hits from Kellen. We're going to have Rurik, Dawn of Kiev by Mark. And I'm going to be talking about Quantum. Let's kick it off with Kellen. Talk us through the games.
Yeah, I had a couple of quick hits this week that I wanted to cover. The first being Sonora by Pandasaurus Games. This is the world's first, and I say that with authority because it was a sticker on the box, the world's first flick and write board game. In Sonora, you have a set of chits, 1 through 5, and there is a board that you're flicking them all onto the board, and depending on where they land, you're using those numbers to fill in boxes on your roll and write sheet, and then you are scoring points. Different chits can do different things. If they land in bonus sections, they become 2 of that number, or they become multiplied. There are 4 different quadrants, so you're sort of doing 4 different mini games all at one time that have some familiarity to other roll and writes that you may have experienced. There's an area control board. There's a board where you're trying to go down along branching paths. There's another one where you're doing a polyomino sort of Tetris where you're trying to circle certain cactus shapes. And then the final puzzle that you were doing is a fill-in-the-triangle game. Sonora has, like good roll and writes, that feeling of comboing where you circle something here and that's going to unlock a bonus there, which is exciting and nice. I think that for me, the roll and write, or I guess just the right portion of this game is a little simplified to allow for the flicking portion of the game. It did not strike me as good as, our master classes like Gauntron Clever and That's So Clever. Is that the same game?
Those are the same game, yeah.
I am very clever. Twice as clever and Gauntron Clever. But it's very beautiful. It's a beautiful looking game. It's an interesting idea. And for someone who wants to combine, 2 disparate mechanisms, I think this is novel in comparison to the dearth of roll and writes that are out in the space right now.
I was sort of excited when I heard about this game initially, and it seems to have come and gone without much fanfare. So I was just sort of curious about why that might have been the case.
There's some other classic examples of this, like Ascending Empires, right, which takes the flicking and combines it with a 4X system, or Safranito, which combines it with a little bit of set collecting, with a little bit of a Euro game and sort of flicking. And I think both of those are much, much more complicated affairs. This feels like a beginner trifle of a game. It was fun, it was cute, but for me personally, probably not sticking around for that reason.
Got it.
In addition, I played my first game of Trois Dice. Now, I will be covering Trois Dice once I have played it more times because it has the namesake Trois, one of my top 10 board games of all time, spoiler alert. And in Trois there are dice, so that is a little confusing if you think about it. But in Trois Dice, it is a roll-and-write version of Trois. With that said, it is absolutely nothing like Trois. There is literally no way to interact with anyone that you're playing with. So it's literally roll dice and solve a multiplayer solitaire puzzle. The symbols and art are stolen from Trois, but they don't always do the same thing that they do in Trois. So, iconography. It's sort of the beautifulness of iconography is that you can learn a system and then remember it. But when you use the same icons and then just plaster it on something else, it's like, hey, wait a minute, what? This is almost right. Influence in Trois lets you re-roll the dice. Influence in Trois dice lets you go one up or one down on that die. I don't get why this was called Trois dice. I think it was designed by the same designer and they wanted to save money on art. With that said, I enjoyed my first play of Trois dice. I'm actually excited to play it again and feel like it does some interesting push your luck things, some Euro things. I'm reasonably intrigued by Trois dice and I'm excited to play it again. Despite it spitting on Trois, this is where I would have a poop joke if we wanted to really go big, but we won't.
That's also actually surprising, considering it's a roll and write, which I know is not your favorite genre. So I guess my biggest question about Trois dice is, does it in any way feel like Trois? Does it have Trois
It
flavor,
looks like Trois.
besides for looking like it?
That's basically what you want from Trois, is just the look of it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The rest is like just sort of...
I was thinking that the combo ability of Trois, where, there was going to be some variability and different either cards or systems would be in place, and you'd have to find the way to connect them to, ding, 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 get all the points. And that is absolutely not what Trois dice is at all. There is some similarities in the type of sort of the red die represents military, the yellow die represents civilization, I don't know, and the white dice, being more the theological whatever. And you're building buildings, protecting against an event die, which is hurting you. So in that way, that feels like Trois. But no, absolutely not. And maybe there's a connection somewhere that I'm not seeing, but just the concept of there being no interaction. It's like, well, it's just like Trois, except without the interaction is absurd. It's like pancakes without flour. It's like, well, no, you haven't made anything, sir or madam. In addition, I have been playing some Feld games online. I just wanted to give a shout out to 2 Feld games that don't suck. That is saying a lot. Both Macao and the Castles of Burgundy I've had the pleasure of playing online. Macao, we are finishing up our second game asynchronously. Macao will be released by Queen Games in the form of Amsterdam, and I'm excited to check out and see what they've done. I wasn't excited enough to pay Queen Games $100 prices to get a hold of Amsterdam, but this is the Feld game that uses a Windrose mechanism where you're deciding between dice right now in values 1 or 2 and dice in values 5 or 6, but you're not going to get those for 3 or 4 turns. I think it's tight and mean and really, really harsh. You have to be very careful that you don't get behind on the turn track, that you don't get behind on the shipping track, that you're doing the area control on the board and collecting resources. I personally, the Windrose is take it or leave it for me, and I know a lot of people, that's their favorite thing about it, but for me, what's so interesting is how tight it is and how you can do some things, but you cannot do everything that you want to do, so it gives me that classic Euro fare. Castles of Burgundy obviously is a classic for a reason, and I think playing both Burgundy and Tuscany back-to-back just makes me go, LOL, what were they thinking? Stick with Bergen von Bergen. Do not take those castles to Tuscany if you have not taken your castles to Burgundy first. That is my week in board gaming, Neelan.
Cool. Yeah, that's a nice mix of stuff. The Felt section especially had me intrigued because I was just playing in the Year of the Dragon, again with Daniel, who's not played it in a long time, and it still makes me, I feel like, God, I need to play that with you sometime, Callan. You've not played it before, right?
I have not.
I think what you described about Macau, you would probably dig it.
Yeah, I've wanted to try that. I think the thing for me that's hard, and I guess even the Doctor, the only true living Doctor is guilty of it, is just releasing so many versions of so many different things that are all like different flavors of the same, and going, well, which one is the good one? We just heard that Uwe Rosenberg is releasing a new version of Nova Luna with a different publisher, and it's like, wait a minute, dude, you just released that one. And that annoys me. And obviously one of the two of them is going to be better. This one is better if you like underwater basket weaving, and this one is better if you like purple ponies. And so, whatever are we to do if you like both of those things?
Right. Where's the game for them? Okay, I am going to be talking about Quantum. This is a game that I had played at some point quite a while ago, actually, with Kellen, and we were surprised to find that we had not spoken about it on the podcast. But I've revisited it in a big way this year, especially in the online form that is on Board Game Arena. Quantum is an abstract game themed around spaceship building and moving. So you have a fleet of ships that start on your home planet, and these ships are all represented by dice. in the physical game, you have these nice giant translucent dice, and you set them to specific values to represent the type of ship they are. Ordinarily, you will roll those at the start of the game in order to get a random distribution of ships, and then you have various actions available to you. You can move those ships around between this grid of spaces separating planets. You can attack ships that are on your movement path. You can reconfigure those ships by just taking an action and re-rolling that die, and if you're happy with that new ship, that's great. Or you can use one of those ship's abilities. So like I said, each of the 6 ship types represented by each sort of face on the die has a different ability associated with it, which you can use once per turn. So these might be swapping the position of 2 ships if you're using the number 3 die. The number 1 gets a free attack adjacent to it, and so on. And what's interesting is that these powers are somewhat proportional to their die face value, because that die face value represents how far that ship can move. So a lot of these ships have a trade-off between how far and fast they can move and how good their special ability is. What you're aiming to do is collect these ships around planets, because each planet has a number associated with it. And if the combined value of your ships around a planet equals exactly the number of that planet, you can spend 2 actions to place a cube, which puts you 1 step closer to your win condition. In fact, the game immediately ends as soon as someone places their last cube, and they've won. That's all there is to the game, is moving your ships around, getting them adjacent to planets, and constructing these cubes in order to win. The layer on top of this, which makes Quantum a lot more interesting, is there is this card system of abilities that lives in an array off to the side of the board. Now, whenever you construct one of your cubes on the planet, you get to pick one of those cards. 3 of them are just going to be one-off abilities, and 3 of them are going to be permanent passive upgrades to your fleet, which are fun little game-breaking abilities, like you don't have to re-roll when you deploy a ship, or your deploys don't cost actions, or you get to do extra attacks, or so on. They're just fun little bits of flavor that are exciting when you see them laid out. You're like, oh, that seems powerful. That's what I want. There are other ways to acquire these cards. There's a research action which accumulates over time. So if you do that 6 times, you can get a card. Or if you attack and win 6 battles, you also get to construct a cube for free. So the game encourages aggression. It encourages strategic placement. It encourages being clever with your ship's abilities in order to maneuver them around the board. I've grown to like this game a lot more than my initial taste of it. Like when I first played this as a 2-player game with Kellen, I thought this was an interesting take on an abstract game with a fun layer of the card abilities. The game really came into its own, I think, playing it as a 4-player game. I don't know if that's the conventional wisdom. I'm generally not sure, but I kind of found that the maneuvering around multiple fleets and the trying to negotiate with and discover and work with who you think is in the lead or who you think is behind in order to overcome the player in the lead is a lot of the fun of that game, in order of tactically positioning your ships in order to blockade sections of the board. I've really enjoyed this. Have either of you played Quantum?
I played it quite a while ago, a couple times, but it must have been 3 years ago or so. I remember thinking it was clever, but not being overly enamored with it.
I think it's impossible to describe how weird this game feels, and you might take Neelan's description, great description of dice and spaceships and fighting in the galaxy, as being more like Ameritrash than it actually is, because what you're deciding to do on your turn, how many, you have 3 actions on your turn?
Yeah.
And those 3 actions are crazy, like change this ship to a 3, then use that ship to drag another ship, and then use that ship to suddenly maneuver your way into the perfect spot. It feels very almost chess-like in the abstract sort of positional nature of what you're doing on the board. And then when you layer onto that those LOL card abilities, you've got a game that feels very unlike anything else. Other interesting facts about this is going for over $100 on the resale market. It has extremely beautiful, big, translucent dice that are very cool to look at and to play with. It also has variable maps, so that map setup you have in the rulebook sort of shows you different configurations that are going to change sort of the flow and function of the game. This one feels like a gem for people who really want to dive into it. I think that it was too abstract overall for me with that combination of the card abilities. I just couldn't wrap my head around it, and what you do on an individual turn, you have so many choices. It wasn't personally for me. I think it's fantastic. I think it's very interesting, and I would be shocked to not see it come back in print in some form. You've been playing it online somewhere?
Yeah, so Board Game Arena has an excellent, I can't stress enough, their implementation is fantastic. Yeah, no, visually, in terms of like the feedback, has a very comprehensive undo system, which I always like. One of my big gripes with Board Game Arena sometimes is a misclick can basically tank your entire game. Not so in Quantum, thankfully.
Always tries to undo his turns after they've already been sent to the server.
Exactly, when I have accidentally eaten half of my people in Trois through no fault of my own.
Undo, quote unquote.
But Quantum, I would highly recommend trying it out that way. It is this, like you said, Kellen, it is this very weird mishmash in a way that really does work for me of being a quite procedural abstract game, because you'll have those moments where you're like, okay, like you said, bam, transport, move, place, construct, done, beautiful. And that gets you the card you need, that ticks up your dominance to 6, place another cube. Bam, fantastic. Those moments feel really, really good. But yeah, like you said, card craziness is a big part of this game. I mean, it has combat, it has dice rolling as a big part of this game. So it definitely loses a lot of the purity, which takes it, for me at least, from an abstract that I would probably not have that much interest in, to something that's a little bit more fluffy, a little bit more accessible, and something quite interesting as a result. I would definitely encourage people to check that out on Board Game Arena. That is Quantum. Okay, Mark, what have you been playing?
I have been playing Rurik, Dawn of Kiev.
Ooh.
Rurik, yeah. Are you just excited about it, or just the way I said it?
No, this has a lot of hype on the internet.
Okay.
I am excited to hear about it. I want to hear what you have to say. I'll probably look it up on the side just to sort of help with
you should look it up.
explanation.
There's a lot going on in your Rurik. Rurik has a lot of interesting aspects to it. So basically what it is a area control game that is fundamentally a Euro game, but with some Ameritrash trappings to it, okay? It's a low-scoring game, and you are scoring points at the end of the game based on really 3 objectives that you have. There is a rule objective, a build objective, and a trade objective. And so this is a troops on the map game. So you have troops that you have, and you have your own special like leader character that gives everybody an asymmetric power. But it's important in describing this game to note these 3 ways that you're scoring, because, again, there are not very many points to be had, and they're primarily coming from this achievement track that you have. So the rule achievement track gives you points for ruling various sections of this map. And the way that you rule a section of the map is to have more troops in an area than any other one player. If you do, you're considered ruling that spot, and there are bonuses that you get for a region that you rule. It's easier to get resources, a bunch of stuff. But at the end of every round, you will check to see how many regions you rule. If you rule somewhere between 2 regions and 5 regions, you will place your marker on a track indicating, hey, I have ruled in this round 4 regions, for example. And at the end of the game, for example, having ruled 4 regions will give you 3 points. Now, one interesting aspect of this is, for those who have played games like Colosseum, when you go up one of these 3 main scoring tracks, you can, in a subsequent round, go lower than any of your previous high scores and not come back down. So, for example, if at one point you have ruled 4 regions, you'll move your marker up to the 4-region part of the rule track, and then in a later round, if you are only rule 2 regions or rule no regions, you still have locked that 4-region marker there. So there's a strategy involved in just making a push to at some point hit the top of these tracks. You don't need to maintain like a high threshold and all in these different tracks. As long as you hit it once, you are guaranteed that many points at the end of the game. So that's one interesting aspect of it. The next way that you can score is to build. One of the actions you can take is to build one of 3 different buildings. Each building gives you a special bonus in that region. But if you build in adjacent regions, at the end of a round, you'll see, are you in 2 adjacent regions, 3 adjacent regions, up to 7 adjacent regions, and that will give you points. Like a lot of aspects in this game that could be complicated, the building of regions is actually quite simple. There are 3 types of buildings, as I've mentioned. If you take a build action and you rule a region, you can just build the building for 1 build point. If you don't rule the region, you can build a building for 2 build points. I appreciate this game's seeming effort to make a lot of things that could be calculations fairly simple. It sort of strips out a lot of like modifiers. Things are pretty clear on the board. Finally, the last of the 3 main, again, scoring tracks is this trade track. So you can acquire goods from different regions on the board, And if you do, you can put them on you've got like a boat that you can fill up. There's more to it than that, but if you are able to have 11 goods on your boat at the end of any one turn, you have hit the top of the trade track, and you'll score 8 points for that. As low as 3 goods on your boat will give you 1 point. But again, if in the first round you have 11 goods, you've hit the top, and then you don't have to worry about it for the rest of the game. You've achieved the most that you can on this trade track. Okay, so that's one interesting aspect of the game. The fact that there are these 3 main scoring paths, and that once you hit a level, you can never go under it. So it encourages this push. There's also a warfare track. You move up the warfare track by defeating your opponents. That is different than defeating these non-playing characters that seed the game. And again, in this whole idea of simplicity, when you attack a non-playing character, you just defeat them. When you attack an opponent in the game, you just defeat them. There's no idea of your one strength versus their strength or what type of troop it is. It's if you take the attack action, you defeat the other person. At the end of the game, whoever is highest on the warfare track will score 3 points. So it's not as rewarding as the other 3 tracks, and this is the sort of the Euro bent on it. Troops that are defeated in this game go back to your supply. It's not super punishing to be killed by your opponents in this game. And again, this is sort of the Euro part of it shining through. So those are the three main tracks. Now, here's the other very, very interesting part of this game. I would say the most interesting part of this game is the action selection track.
Mark.
Yes.
Are we talking about auction programming right now?
We are talking about auction programming.
Oh my God. Because I just saw that buzzword and I'm so intrigued by the idea of this.
Okay. So there are 5 different types of actions you can do. There's mustering, which adds troops to your board. There's movement, moving troops around the board. There's attacking, again, attacking non-playing characters or your opponents. There's taxing, which is how you get resources. There's building, which is how you build one of your 3 buildings. And again, you want those buildings in your region because they give you bonuses, but you also, to go up that build track, you want them in adjacent regions. So you want them concentrated, but also spread around. And there's finally this scheme action, which allows you to draw these cards that allow you to take action sort of without having to worry about this board. Now, the action selection board depicts these 5 actions. And the 5 actions are strongest on top, and as you go down each action's column, they get weaker. So, for example, the muster action. If you take the top muster action, you get 3 muster points. You get to muster 3 troops. If you are lowest on the muster track, you can muster 1 troop at the cost of a coin.
That's measured in determination, right?
Right, exactly. It's willpower. It's WPP, the willpower point.
Muster.
That's right. But the way that you take the actions is you have 5 meeples that are numbered from 1 to 5. It's actually 1, 2, 4, and 5. So they're numbered 1, 2, 4, and 5. Now, when you place a meeple on one of these columns, you're always going to want to place them on top. There's no reason to want to take a weaker action. So you place your meeple on top, and you can bolster the meeple's number by adding coins. Coins are a fairly rare resource. So, I could put my 1 meeple on the top muster action and add 3 coins to make it a 4. And then you just keep going around the table placing your meeples. Now, anybody who places a meeple that exceeds a meeple in a column pushes all the lower meeples down. So if I've put my 1 meeple on the top of the mustard column, and then Kellen puts his 4, he pushes mine down. So he takes the top spot, and I go down. In case of a tie, which would be in the case there because I bolstered by 3, then things don't change. So if I had a 1 plus 3 coins, and Kellen put his 4, he would go under. But for the most part, a higher meeple placed will push the other ones down. So you don't need to get there first. In fact, there's a timing aspect. There's a trying to figure out, do I want to put this later and hold off on my coins? And so there's that part to when you want to place things on the board. Furthermore, to make it even more interesting is, once you've placed all your meeples out, you trigger them going around the table in the order of lowest to highest numbered meeple. So your 1 is likely to be pushed down because, it's a lower strength meeple, so it's going to be pushed down by the higher ones, but it will fire off first. It'll be the first one you pull off and take the action. So it's very interesting because sometimes, you want to move then build, but I need to move 3, but I need to build at least 1 point. So am I going to put my 4 on the build action and then put my 1 on the move, but then I'm going to have my 1 moved all the way down, so I'm actually not going to be able to move that much. So there's a consideration of the strength of the meeple and the timing of pulling off the meeples. It's very interesting in that respect. So that's basically the other big part of this game. This action selection board is really, really interesting. One other quick thing that strikes me as an interesting part of the game are these scheme cards. They're, for the most part, a standard thing that you might expect in a Euro game, where if you take a scheme card, it will generally allow you to do an action without having to require a meeple placed on the board. So, you might pull a scheme card that allows you to move. So you don't have to worry about placing a meeple because you have the scheme card that allows you to move. However, the interesting thing about the scheme cards are they are sort of multi-purpose because a third of them have this icon on it, and I was a little bit incorrect before. When you attack an opponent, you automatically defeat them, but there's a chance that your troop dies when you fight one of the other players at the table. And the way you determine that is you flip a scheme card over, and if it has this mark on it, the player is dead. Now, the reason that's interesting is because if you take the scheme action to draw cards, you draw, say, for example, if you take the best scheme action, you'll draw 3 cards, you'll look at them, you'll take the one you want, but then you put back the ones you don't take in any order you want on the stack. So you'll know potentially if the next card that's drawn is a kill the attacker card. So again, that's another interesting aspect of the game. Now, what do I think about Rurik, Dawn of Kiev? It may sound that I loved it, and there is a lot to love. There's definitely a lot to love. But for some reason, it felt like a situation where the sum of the game was not as great as the parts. It has a lot of really cool things. The asymmetric powers of your leaders are cool as well. The action board is fantastic. You really find yourself thinking, like, I need these to fire off in like these 2 orders, and I need to work out this way. How am I going to guarantee that? That's really interesting. But for some reason, it just didn't come together. I definitely want to give it another shot. Again, with a game like this where it feels like there's so many good things, I feel like the ingredients to the stew are all there. Maybe I need to just try it another time and give it a shot.
It was the people you were playing with, Mark.
I will not agree to that statement.
But I can say it. No, it does sound like there's a really interesting action programming system. There's less interesting things. It seems fairly typical to me on the dudes on the map side of the fence.
Yeah.
But that would be elevated by people that you love, and people that are highly competitive could take a straightforward rule set with that interesting wrinkle and really ratchet it up to where that auction programming becomes like, oh man, I'm going to kill you if you do that more.
Right. And we played this at 3, and I think it's fine at 3. I think with 4, it might be a lot better because that action selection board becomes much tighter and much more cutthroat.
I have a quick question about the action selection system. So did you find frequently or at all where there were moments where if you didn't get your way on the board, that you just felt like, well, this kind of like guts my whole turn, my whole round?
Interesting. So yes, a little bit, but the thing is, there are so few types of action against just muster, move, attack, tax, build, and scheme that you're never going to be locked out of any action. Like, if you ever place a meeple on the board, you're going to get that action. Now, you might really, really need 3 movement and only get 1, but I never found it like completely ruining my plans. And furthermore, if you need to do something, you can make sure you do it. You can put a very high meeple on there, or if you need to do it early and you just need to do it, you can just put a bunch of coins and just make it unappealing to anybody else that pushed you down. Sure. So both those aspects mitigate the like, oh, it messed up my whole plan situation.
It's just, I'm ready to give this 10 out of 10 points, but I'm so biased against a name like Rurik, Dawn of Kiev. Only one of those words is real.
You're anti-Ukrainian here by talking...
No, I looked that up just to make sure I didn't sound like a dummy. I do know that's in the Ukraine, but Rurik is not a word, and Dawn is about as generic as we can get.
I am very eager to play this with you, Kellen, but I will say that one of the players I played it with, and this seems to be bolstered by people talking about it online, compared it to Scythe. And I can see that. The Euro game with Ameritrash trappings, I think it's a little more bitey than Scythe.
It's like Scythe, but good.
Sure.
So if that's the sentence, it's perfect.
Sure.
Let's do it.
So that is Rurik, Dawn of Kiev.
My review of this, having never played it, is 9 out of 10, and 10 out of 10 if they republish without the colon.
Just one run-on sentence, just Rurik, Dawn of Kiev. No colon.
No, you have to lose the word Rurik as well,
okay,
and Dawn. So this can just be
Kiev.
Yeah, sure.
Done. Cool. So before we get into our featured topic, let's get a little bit of business out of the way in the middle here. We have, for patrons of the show, another bonus episode coming up very soon. And if you joined us last month, our bonus episode was a live show. We did this live on YouTube, and it was a lot of fun. We took people's questions in real time. We had shenanigans with Mark, and someone else, some mysterious figure in a costume as well.
Who I can promise will be making more appearances.
Ooh, can't wait for that. It was a lot of fun, and we're excited to do this as the conventional format for bonus episodes going forward. So please join us. That is going to be scheduled for this coming Sunday, the 22nd of November. And we're scheduling that for noon Pacific time.
So that is 3 Eastern and 8 in London. So I want some international representation.
Yeah.
What time is it in Rurik? Oh, Kiev, excuse me.
Probably 11.
Hopefully this is a reasonable time where we could get some more international viewers in. So yeah, definitely wherever you are, come and join us on our Patreon live stream.
And then the other bit of news is that you won't find us here next Thursday, the 26th, for episode 150. It is both Thanksgiving and it is a special episode for us, episode number 150. So we are going to take a week off so that we can prep and make that as good as we want it to be for number 150.
Yeah, so look forward to that. And without further ado, let's get into the feature topic. We're going to be talking about our shelves of shame. So this is something we visited very early in the podcast, and I'd be curious to hear what games are now occupying your attention on your shelf of shame. So Kellen, so very quickly, what does a shelf of shame mean to you personally, and how has that changed for you over time?
Yeah, shelf of shame for me is a very real concept of the games that you have purchased but have not played. I think it's particularly sharp, particularly cognizant, particularly, I can't think of the word, profound. I mean, obviously. But when you are acquiring so many new games, when you're always on the lookout for new games, and then you have, 50 plus sitting at home that you've never played, that is really, for me, what makes the word shame stick to this. At one point, you were excited about acquiring the thing you have acquired, and now you have tricked yourself into spending hours on Kickstarter backing new games when you have all these games at home. And I think that is financially disastrous and also just a little bit wasteful. So for me, a shelf of shame, I went back through and counted. There are 52 board games on my shelf of shame, which is a lot. And now let me read them to you. Super Motherload, Evidence, Adventure Games, Monochrome Inc., Rebel Knox, Craftwagon, Vanuatu, Blue Skies, Curious Cargo, Project Elite, Formosa T, Mothership, a Peter Sanderson game, Lagranza, Hitsy Road, 15 Men, Tammany Hall, Wildlands, Time Palantric, Senators, Bunny Kingdom Expansion, Stark Arcadia Quest, Redacted Until December, Mexica, Barony, Senji, Ad Astra, Argent the Consortium,
Neil, just ask me what I think about Shelf of
Masters
Shame.
of Venice, Manga, Hadara, No Honor Among Thieves, Spartacus, Detective, Welkin, Richard the Lionheart, Caravan,
Thanks for asking me, Neil.
Stock Hold'em,
Shelf of
Expedition
Shame
Northwest Passage,
is a
New
much
York
different
Zoo,
thing to me.
Animal
The
Upon
Oxford
Animal
Dictionary.
Christmas Miracle Edition,
Fine.
Medici Dice Game, Sovereign's Chain, Demon Worker, Santa Monica, Dragon Scales, Divvy Dice, Stroop, Bazaar, 1906 San Francisco, 1920 Wall Street, 1980 something Channing Tatum, 52 board games
1980 Channing
on
Tatum?
the list. Oh, Tunnel. The Channing Tunnel, 1989.
I'm pretty sure you said Peter Sanderson there.
I did. That is Mothership, a Peter Sanderson game.
See.
That's real. You're welcome.
Cool. Okay, that's it for Kellen. Thank you very much for being here. You have Santa Monica? I just bought Santa Monica.
You idiot. You should have waited till I read this list.
Mark, what's your...
Yes.
what,
We live in Santa Monica.
I know.
That's why we had to have
yeah,
it.
that's why you had to have it. Mark, what does the shelf of shame mean to you? In less words
Yes.
than Kellen.
I am much more concise than Kellen. I know Kellen hates this term. Kellen just did a really bad thing on the screen to
Don't
me.
do it, Mark. Do not say it.
Oh, this is even better. I feel even better about this because he hates this. So Kellen hates this term, but I do see my shelf of shame as a shelf of opportunity. Kellen, what do you have to say about that?
Delusion.
Okay. I actually do. I honestly do. I didn't think of it as a shelf of opportunity, but I know that's a term that's bandied about, and it works for me. It honestly does. I liken, and I have much more games on my shelf of shame / opportunity than Kellen does, but for me, I feel no pressure about it. I feel no guilt about it. I was thinking about this today, and it feels to me like a bookshelf. Like, you go to the bookstore, or you hear about a book, and you are interested in it, and you buy the book. And for me, that's even less guilt associated because I'm not even buying half these books. I'm trading for them. So, like, I think if I was buying these games new, or if I was buying these games at Kickstarter prices, I might feel some level of guilt. But at this point, 90% of my collection is games that I've traded for and games that will be traded again. So I don't really feel that part of the guilt. And to me, these are all like potential good experiences, fun experiences that I'll be undertaking at some point.
Yeah, I have to imagine like that the mental equation is very different when you're operating on a game you've played out, new game in system, right? Where it's kind of like those games feel like you've lost less in order to have them be there. You know what I mean?
Right.
That makes sense. I think for me, like, I sort of have the exact opposite mental state of that, where every game I own that I don't play exists in the sort of like meta level of anxiety hovering over my head. And every time I walk past, I'm just like, I should play that sometime. And it fills me with this little bit of dread, because I used to pride myself on not being that person. Like, there was a point in time where I had one unplayed game in my collection, and that was like Fury of Dracula. And then I got rid of Fury of Dracula, and that solved that problem. But yeah, now I think the thing that's been especially interesting about this year, as Kellen alluded to, is we're still acquiring games at the same rate we have, whether that's because we're having stuff sent to us or we're receiving stuff from Kickstarter or pre-orders that just kept rolling in, even though we weren't playing through the games we already had at the same rate. That said, like, my Shelf of Shame is in the vicinity of, like, I've not done the exact count, but it's like 15-ish would be my guess. So it's definitely not as bad as I imagine. I hope Kellen doesn't feel that bad about it, as I'm implying, but like, it's certainly not, it doesn't operate as much physical space, thankfully, as the 50 games that Kellen just rattled off. But yeah, I still have a similar sense of really intent need to want to play these games.
Mark, let me ask you this.
Yep.
What does all of the people who want to use your gym for the actual activities that the gym was designed for, namely anyone in your house, how do they feel about all of the opportunity that they see when they look around in every corner of the gym?
I mean, I've always assumed that the gym was the board games. You're sort of pulling weights and that little pulley goes up with a bag of board games on the other end.
Right.
And
Yeah, if you really want to work out, you need to have a lot of games. You need to have a lot of heavy games. No, look, obviously jokes have been made about the number of games that we have. And I do feel like I have more than I need to trade. I feel like I've gotten to a point now where via trading, I've acquired most of the games that I feel like I'll never want to trade away. Again, every game's up for trade. I have no emotional attachment to any of these things, but I have games that I was seeking through trade, or I wanted, or were interesting me. So of the games that I was sort of seeking out, I feel like I've acquired most of them now, and I do have this now desire to sort of winnow away the ones that I have just for trade fodder. That I have all this trade fodder for games now that I don't have any targets so much, if that makes any sense. So there is a desire to cut a number of these games out for the space and for just, I have too much trade fodder right now. So yes, too much space is taken up by these games, but I do one auction on BGG, or I list them on eBay, and they'll all go away. Like, they're here now, they're gone tomorrow. It's like, who cares?
If you moved, what would that opportunity feel like?
I did move recently.
And what did that opportunity feel like?
I mean, I boxed them up and I moved the boxes. Whatever. No big deal.
You're derailing us, sir. I thought we had a united front.
When you move, you're going to move a bunch of stuff, right? I have a couple more boxes to move. It's not a big deal.
Have you ever read Marie Kondo before?
Where is she now? She's gone. Everybody was all Marie Kondo a couple months ago, and now where is she?
I mean, maybe she didn't spark joy, so we got rid of her.
That's right, exactly. But your point is taken. There is a level where, depending on the circumstances, that you will have gone too far. And I'm rubbing up against that. There's definitely games I would like to shed. But I just don't feel this like level of anxiety about it, really. Like I said, I put an auction up today, and by next week, 30 games will be gone.
I could put you up for auction, and by tomorrow you'd be
Boom.
Okay.
Such a high price.
Let's get into the meat of this topic, which is going to be the actual specific games that we thought were going to be interesting to talk about. Mark, tell us about a game on your shelf that you feel strongly about wanting to play.
So I will say that, with COVID and the circumstances it's put us in, one of the issues I had with getting games off the shelf and to the table is I did feel a little bit precious about wanting the exact right situation. Like, I want this at the perfect time when I'm really feeling like it, and with the perfect group and all that stuff. And I feel like that threshold has started to erode for me. I've played a number of games recently, 2 players, that I would have ideally waited for a larger player count. And now I just don't even care because these are games that are fun. Like, I look at BGG and I see what the recommended player count is. And as long as it's not like, do not play at 2, I'll give it a shot now. I don't really even care. So, but that said, one nice thing about being forced in this 2-player like sort of situation that I find myself in is I have been playing a lot more strictly 2-player games. I plan on playing Imperial Struggle pretty soon, which is the follow-up to Twilight Struggle. So that'll be played, I think, within the next week or so. But a game that I have been looking forward to is Star Wars Rebellion, the big 2-player Star Wars in a box game, as it's bandied about as. It's 2 players. It's really long. It's a huge table hog, but in a situation where you have some time and only one other player and not a lot of things vying for your time, I figure it's a good enough time to give it a shot. So that's a game that I'm hoping to play reasonably soon.
I don't even know who you are.
Why is that?
Episode. Are you playing a character right now?
I've always played a character. I'm always on. No, what do you mean?
Star Wars Rebellion?
Yeah.
I've heard that's good.
Next you're going to tell me you liked the sequel trilogy and that The Phantom Menace wasn't your favorite movie.
I'd never say that.
That's true. The Phantom Menace.
I think the thing that you're describing, Mark, of like the idealized circumstances for a game is exactly the reason that I've not played Maracaibo, which I received close to release at the beginning of this year. I was so excited to play, as someone that was really, really, really taken with our play of Great Western Trail. I was very interested in the idea of Maracaibo. And it's a game where, in my head, I was like, okay, this will probably be a game that I want to play with Mark, maybe Kellen. I get a sense it's less of Kellen's jam. If he was down to play it, absolutely, obviously. But I just think that the idealized circumstances for a game that's on that end of the weight spectrum and that long was probably just never going to come around. And what is interesting is that now with the coming approach of Cloud Age and people sort of starting to talk up the Maracaibo campaign, particularly from the perspective of solo, I'm starting to suspect that this might be the way that I just have to get past that hurdle and just say, hey, if I'm never going to play Maracaibo under the idealized multiplayer situations, maybe I just play through it solo. And that's fine. That's totally fine.
One of the games that I have really wanted to get to the table and have not is a Hisashi Hayashi game, the man who made Yokohama and Metro X. This is Stock Hold'em. I read about this as a light stock game, and I purchased it. But it wasn't until I read the rules that the Hold'em in Stock Hold'em is actually referring to poker. And so you are playing a stock game where everyone is putting cards down into different stocks to affect their value, and then those cards are turned over, and poker hands will determine how much those stocks go up in value. But on the back of the cards, you can see some information about what that type of card may or may not be. And so you want to help certain stock hands and hurt other ones. It also has a ridiculous shark on the cover. This is my penchant for weird Japanese games. I think the long and short of it is we are not getting together as often as we otherwise would. I would say 2019, it was every other weekend, borderlining on every weekend. And now it would be we get on the phone to record with each other, and then we say bye-bye, and Mark goes and plays games with who the knows in his gym, while we sit at home crying, and Nealon plays with himself, or on Board Game Arena, Quantum.
Yep. That'd be the entirety of my year.
That is Stock Hold'em, a game. I know we will like it. I know we will like it with the 4 of us, but it doesn't make sense to play at a low player count. It doesn't make sense to try to jam it in somewhere when we're sitting outside trying to play with these little Japanese cards. We just got to save it. But we're saving it forever. I need to inspire a sense of urgency into you guys. I wanted some sort of, we're going to burn one game a month from our shelf of shame unless we play one. You know what I mean? And live.
I love this.
We'll go to the Santa Monica Pier, and we'll each pick a game, and we'll burn them.
Either your copy of Santa Monica Goes or Nealon's copy of Santa Monica Goes, but there'll only be one. I'm all for this. I'm all for saying, we got to play a game by some period of time or another game's got to go or something.
Should we do it? Should we hard commit to one game each?
I think so, absolutely.
One game from the Shelf of Shame per month, or what? Or else?
Or else, exactly, yeah.
We'll have the patrons vote on what the or else is. No. Or we send a game to a patron.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that idea.
One of the games?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the same game. Or maybe it should be the same game. If we don't play it, it's got to go to somebody?
It's basically like you've got to be every month actively going down in your shelf of shame number.
Yeah.
Right.
Or else you do go down in your shelf of shame number
Yes,
if you're giving away one of your
exactly.
games.
Okay.
I like this idea. I think we should do this.
It sounds expensive.
Well, not if you play your games.
Exactly.
Not if you get good.
That's right. Right.
What are we going to name this? Take a turn or make it burn.
Take a turn or make it burn. That's good.
Done.
I like it.
Except the burning being the United States Postal Service shipping service.
Cool. I think that's a cool idea. And I love the idea of just having, an increased incentive to do this.
So tell me which game you guys are each aiming for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean,
to play next.
one of the games I've been throwing around, and maybe makes sense for this because I've reached a point where I might actually be able to play it. For whatever reason, and this is going to sound dumb because I don't think it's going to be a good game, but Bioshock Infinite Siege of Columbia is a 2-player board game that I've had for the longest time with the specific intent of playing it with my good friend Kirsten, who's also a massive fan of the video game like I am. So we kind of just said like, hey, there's this game. It's probably not great, but we both like the video game, so we should play this sometime. And then we both got extremely busy at our job, and it just never happened. And then all of 2020 happened. So I think now might be the time to finally get to the bottom of whether Bioshock Infinite, The Siege of Columbia is at all worth our collective time.
Another colon game there, Kelly.
Yeah, I think this one gets a pass because it's better than it saying like Siege of Columbia, a Bioshock game, which would be the other way that they could do this. They need to tie it to their property mark. I wouldn't expect you to understand this. You don't work in video games.
You don't think the
like
Rurik
rest
people
of us.
should tie it to Dawn of Kiev?
Rurik is not a real place.
But Kiev is.
Yeah, but barely, okay?
Kellen?
I don't want to pick one. I don't like this game.
I'm not saying you have to. I'm not saying you.
It doesn't have to be
game.
this.
Yeah, but just
Okay,
one that you're
let's
sort
go
of
down.
gunning.
Yeah, Caravan is in the running. New York Zoo, recent acquisition, is in the running for me. But also one I've had for quite a while now, Bunny Kingdom. I keep meaning to play it at a higher player count, but I hear it's also fine at 2. So I should just get it out of the shelf so that I don't have to burn it and or ship it to a patron.
This doesn't work at 2, I don't think, but Antike 2 is a game that I've had for a long time. It's one of my oldest games on my shelf of shame that I've heard nothing but great things about. It's like a lot of people consider it Matt Gertz's best game, and he's had a lot of good ones. So Antike 2 is one that I would definitely want to play. Same with Time of Crisis is a game that I've had for a long time that I've always wanted to play.
Oh yeah, I'm good at the 4th one in the arcade, not great at the 5th.
2 is the best
I didn't
one.
get that. What? Oh my god. This is another joke that went over my head. What is this? What's this joke?
Time Crisis.
Oh,
think
Time
the best
Crisis.
arcade
This is
game
Time
ever made.
of Crisis. Time of Crisis. I'm familiar with Time Crisis.
Time Crisis is where you get to use the sewing machine thing to crouch, then you come back up.
Time Crisis might be, in actual fact, the game that I've beaten the most of any video game. Time Crisis 2.
Oh, interesting.
What, did you have the arcade?
No, I didn't have the arcade game.
Well, what do you mean? I don't know what they have in South Africa.
But no, it was like the predominant way I would spend my I was going to say quarters, but they definitely weren't quarters. They were 2 rand
Adolescent.
coins.
You'll never convince me that that's real money.
So I think that's going to do it with our thoughts on our shelves of shame. As always, we're very curious to hear your takes on this topic. So jump into our guild at boardgamebarrage.com/guild or join our Discord at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord and tell us about your shelves of shame. Tell us about the games that you've been most anticipating playing that you've not had a chance to get around to, or how your very idea of what a shelf of shame means to you might have changed this year, especially. Please tell us all about that. We'd be very curious to hear your thoughts. Otherwise, you can find us on all of our social media. We are on Twitter at BRD Game Barrage. We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram. You can also email us at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com. Thank you all for listening. Just another reminder that we will see you in 2 weeks' time for episode number 150 of the Board Game Barrage podcast. And yeah, if you are at the lieutenant tier or higher on our Patreon, please join us for our bonus episode, which will be this Sunday at noon Pacific time. And if you can't join us live, this will be made available later, both in video and audio form, through the normal bonus episode feed. Thank you all so much. Thank you to Heart Society for our intro and outro music. What's on your mind, kid? Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so this guy on Facebook has been calling me on Facebook Messenger all day. Like, you can apparently call people, and it shows up on my iPhone like he's calling. And then he said, "Hey, can I chat with you?" I answered it, and I was like, "Hey," he's like, "Hey, can I chat with you?" And then he hung up on me, and then he messaged, "Can I chat with you?" And I said, "About what?" And he said, "Nothing, just to make friendship. Hello." I said, "No, thanks." And then he said, "Don't you like to talk with me?" And he sent me a picture of a crying Pomeranian, which...
So who is this guy? Do we not? That's all you know?
He added me on Facebook, and I accepted, which was my mistake.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rupa.
No idea what he is? Like, is he a...
No, but he keeps calling. Christina keeps going.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, he keeps calling me. But I haven't blocked him on Facebook yet, so maybe it is my mistake.
Yeah, at this point, you're just asking for this. You're asking for him to make friend.
But I don't get it. When I did try to talk to him, he hung up on me. You know?
Yeah.
Like, I answered for Rupa. Fill in the triangle game. Sorry, Christina's coming in, and the dog is going to be loud for the next 30 seconds. Fill in the triangle game? That's probably close. Hi, Misty. We are live, Christina, so you did just ruin a
very good take. I would definitely encourage people to check that out on Board Game Arena. That is Quantum.
While you were talking, Shelby messaged me on Facebook and says, "I am lonely, come to me," emoji I've never seen before. Join my live video at water emoji. I won't share the link because this is obviously private from Shelby to me.
I do not know why you haven't blocked this person already.
Oh, no, this is a different person.
Wait, how many people are you friending on Facebook?
Hurry up. I won't be here too long, my dear.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to close my door real quick. Hold on.
Okay.
That's true. It is heating up in here.
Is this also on Facebook?
It's all on Facebook. Something happened. I became popular. I mean, I know obviously everyone would want to be my friend, but...
Yeah. But you weren't expecting this much attention in one day.
Exactly.